Good afternoon. This is Stefan Oliesi with Canadian Collision Specialists, bringing you the presentation from the Toronto 2023 CCIF convention. And the presentation is called Enslaved by KPIs. For those of you that were unable to attend, you should get the gist of everything from this. So how about we start off here? So, Enslaved by KPIs. This is not going to be your normal, typical KPI presentation. I'm going to put an elephant out in the middle of the room and I'm going to kick it in the shins. And I just want everyone to be prepared for that. Some content might be, a little harsh to people, but you're being advised. So, how's that working for you? So we're talking about the metrics that are involved in running a shop and using KPIs. And we're going to talk about some of the strategies that go with it. So what is a KPI? Well, KPI is a key point indicator. It's a quantifiable outcome that you're measuring in your shop. So it has to be something that is valid in order for you to monitor and maintain the metrics that are being scrutinized in your facility. So what are we focusing on? Well, in our industry, we're going to focus on things like length of rental, cycle time, touch time, and all of these different customer satisfaction indexes, the different things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Now, all of this stuff comes from the data that you put into your management system. So measuring stats and data from your management system is the key thing, and this is where we're going to focus a little bit on throughout this presentation. So where do these things originate from? Well, it's my buddy Peter here. Good old Peter Drucker. Quite an intelligent individual. He's a social ecologist. He's got like 41 books under his belt. He's got published articles in the Harvard Business Review, The Economist, and he's a very intelligent individual. He's since passed, so he has 25 honorary doctorates. Now, one of the things about Peter is he never worked in a collision repair facility. So I just want you to be aware of that. This is something that he said that I find pertains to us quite often here. So much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work. And we see that quite frequently. So here, Peter came from the world of processing, manufacturing, and analyzing the day-to-day functions of these industries. So you would think that this is a foolproof plan for running your business. Unfortunately, probably isn't. And we're going to get into that. So what affects the validity of a KPI? Well, they can be affected by your staff members, can be affected by insurers, can be affected by banners, acquisition groups that take part in this, the outside world, your vendors, your suppliers, sublet providers, etc. So there's all kinds of places where your KPIs are going to be affected. Now, all of this has a direct effect on your KPIs. And how you receive input from outside influences and deal with it is in your control. So, whose idea was this anyways? Why are we doing these KPIs? Well, it's a corporate tactic that a lot of these management and coaching companies have come up with in the corporate world. So it's inspired by these process management tactics that companies use to gauge and watch and measure what is taking place in their industry. And a lot of the times they'll use a set of coaching skills to guide people into following the protocol. Now, KPIs are not without merit. They do serve a great purpose and they are very viable. Now, when these came into play for us in the collision industry, we've got the insurers, the banners, the group organizations. When they started communicating and talking to each other and developing these relationships, this is where it starts to unfold. If you look back to 20 years ago, if I walked into the office and said to my manager, hey, what's my touch time? The manager would probably look at me back then and say, I don't know, that's after work. Like, that's not, we don't want to get into that topic here. And of course, that's not exactly what we're talking about. Touch time is basically the time that you're working on the vehicle. But back then, we didn't scrutinize these things. But as insurers and banners, everyone started getting involved, what happens here is they're looking for a way to manage claims And it's a lot easier for an insurer to manage claims on their own terms. So if you're talking metrics and you're talking numbers, and a lot of this is language that they understand, so it gives them a sense of control at their disposal. Now, when they're doing this, they're looking for value on the dollars that are spent on claims. And this is a justifiable practice. I would want to look for value for the money that I'm spending on services. For the banner or the group, they want to find value on the agreements that they've made. So they've negotiated and got into arrangements and agreements with insurers, and they want to find value for what they've signed on for. And again, I would too. It's a very fair thing. The one thing we got to realize, these are a corporate formulation. So the insurers, the banners, they're using the implementation of coaching, and they're taking something from a production process corporate world and they're bringing it into a blue collar industry. Now, numbers are a very powerful thing. Numbers can be highly influential. When it comes to production processes, it dictates a lot of what's going on. You got to keep trimming stuff until you finally get to the point where you can't trim anymore. And in a way to do this, we apply these different type of practices, such as using Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, 5S's, etc. But be aware, all of this stuff is related to the production science in the manufacturing and fabrication world. This is a world of processing. These worlds have materials that come on demand, but the materials are the same. So for example, if we're going to make 1,000 1-liter bottles of orange juice, I'm going to need 1,000 bottles, 1,000 caps, 1,000 labels, and 1,000 liters of orange juice. And they're going to go on an assembly line. So when you look at manufacturing, as the video earlier, and you look at this video here, you're going to notice something. And what you're noticing is they're all the same. All of the items in the process are identical, and there's no variations. There's nothing in that system that changes the parameters. It's systematic. Now they're producing the same thing over and over and over again. Hundreds of thousands of bottles of orange juice, thousands of cars, trucks, whatever, widgets and doohickeys. None of these scenarios are the typical of a service provider. They are not repairing anything. Bottle of orange juice falls off that assembly line. They don't pick it up, fix it, and put it back in. It's done. They have to start over with another bottle. They don't repair things. So why would we implement this into the collision industry? Well, again, we want to trim the fat, get rid of the wastage. We're looking to control how funds are spent. So the insurers want to get a handle on where all this money goes. They spend a lot of money each year on claims. So they're going to monitor the situation, and they're going to do it in a way that's familiar with them because they don't know any other language. So if you can have a direct input on anything that affects an outcome that's in your favor, why wouldn't you? I would want to do that. If I went into the grocery store and I could say, hey, Joe, I'm going to buy all these bananas, but I'm only going to give you 39 cents a pound instead of 59 cents a pound because, I know a lot of people and I'm going to make you sell a lot of bananas. And Joe's going to say, well, I don't know, but I'm going to try because it's going to be an outcome that's in my favor. The problem is it creates a lot of stress and a lot of hardship on the shops as they're trying to mitigate their way through this. So the production of collision widgets and repair doohickeys. Let's take a look at how this data, the way it's calculated and compiled in the KPIs that we apply to the collision industry, let's look at how it's far removed from the true application of what a KPI tracking should be. So first, look at our industry. We're not building widgets, doohickeys, and mobobs. It's not what we do. No two collisions are the same. Production from a corporate view revolves around the workflow. How are things accomplished? In an insurance office, claims adjusters are looking at their workflow, how to file and close claims as quickly as they can. So a lot of this, as we trim and shave, it becomes a thing that is resemblant of production economics. So I'm going to take a quick look at production economics. I'm going to paint the landscape of what we're dealing with. So here on your screen, we're seeing a big verbiage here. So The satisfaction of needs originates from using the services produced. The need for satisfaction increases when the quality price to ratio of the service improves and the more satisfaction is achieved at a less cost, improving the quality price to ratio of services. This is, to a producer, an essential way to improve the competitiveness of services. Still, this kind of gain is distributed to customers, cannot be measured with production data. So improving the competitiveness of services often means to the producer there's a lower product price and therefore losses in income, which are to be compensated with the growth of sales volume. All right, so that's a great big mouthful. So let me put this into terms that are reflective of our industry. Let's just mix that up. The satisfaction of claims originates from using the repairs produced. The need for satisfaction increases when the quality to price ratio of the repairs improves and more satisfaction is achieved through your lean processes, such as Lean Six Sigma, 5S's, etc. Improving the quality to price ratio of KPIs, such as your cycle time, length of rentals, is to a shop an essential way to improve the competitiveness of operations. Still, this kind of gain is distributed to the insurers. It cannot be measured with just solely production data. The KPI data is going to be skewed or false, and we will cover this a little bit more in detail as we move along. Improving the competitiveness of repairs often means to the shop lower product prices and therefore losses in incomes, which are to be compensated with the growth of sales volume. This bottom part is where we need to focus. Improving the competitiveness of repairs often means to the shop lower product prices and therefore losses in incomes, which are to be compensated with the growth of sales volume. In other words, we lose a little off of each operation only to make it up in volume. So you've seen this before? Buy more, save more? Just remember, a whole lot more of less is a whole lot less. So in production, you can ramp up volume because you can run a 24-hour a day, 7 days, 365 days a year facility that can help make up for volume. But we don't do that. We work from 8 till 5 and do the occasional Saturday. So there's a difference there. So when we apply this logic to our service industry, we're going to be faced with inconsistencies. So again, using KPIs is not without merit, and I'm not dissing and I'm not poo-pawing the KPI, but it needs to be adjusted. We need to accommodate it. So we're going to accurately apply the KPI logic and this lean process ideology. The statistical data needs to be 100% correct. It cannot be falsified. If the data compiled does not reflect the reality, then you're just feeding yourself a lie. So in order for this to work properly, everything needs to be accounted for. And when I say everything, I mean everything. You cannot cherry pick the things that you want to be included in your data. It creates silos of what's going on within your organization. Your metrics have to be a source of 100% accuracy. You cannot cherry pick something. Whatever you need to do that job needs to be tracked because it takes what it takes in order to get the job done. So you can't make up costs, you can't apply caps, you can't fudge numbers to make things look good. If it costs $1,000 to paint the front end of the vehicle, that's what it costs. You can't cap it at $250 because it's irrelevant. It doesn't work. It's falsified. So to my point, if you're not accounting for everything, KPIs are enslaving you. You're just going to be chasing the dragon, an unattainable quest in which you'll never ever get to the bottom of it. And eventually it becomes a race to the bottom. You have to apply it diligently to reflect reality. So, one of the things that I want you to understand here is the part of the benefits is the one that's creating it. The shops themselves did not create all of this. This was created by another entity. So we have to understand that in order to participate properly. If we don't, and we keep doing the same things over, metaphorically we become performing monkeys. And this clip here is ironically titled Monkeys Fighting Over Peanuts, because that's eventually what starts to happen in our industry. We're banging our heads against the walls, wondering why are we working so hard, and KPIs are always telling us a different story. So, how are our collision widgets and doohickeys different? Well, first of all, we do not manufacture or process widgets and doohickeys or mobobs. We provide a service, and services are inconsistent. And therefore, this shows you that the relationship is quite unbalanced. So KPIs are a great tool when they are balanced and accurate. So, this is where we bring this, the disillusion of the illusion of a partner. So we're going to look at how the perception of this is far from the definition of a partner. And this is where we start to turn things so we can level our playing field. So let's understand how we got here. How did we get into this position of where we're at right now? I've been hearing the same things for 40 years, and everything is still the same. And now with all of this KPI influencing, we've accepted an unbalanced matrix. So how does this happen? Well, I'm going to give you an analogy. There's more than one Frank T.J. McKay out there, and that person's selling you an idea. So we have been exposed to this idea that if we cooperate and we do this, we're going to sign agreements on the dotted line and the customers are going to show up in droves. I promise it'll be good for you, partner. That's how we get into this. So the motivational speaker and the corporation propinquity effect. And what that is basically, in a nutshell, if we live in an apartment building and I live on the top floor and a really, pretty girl lives on the top floor, I have a greater chance of meeting her than if she lives on the first floor and I live on the top floor. And basically it's just the law of exposure. So we got Frank T.J. McKay and we got ABC Insurer. Frank is promising a life of prosperity and security. ABC Insurer is also promising prosperity and security within your business. Frank is a corporation. Don't kid yourself, he may be one person, but he is a corporation. ABC Insurer is also a corporation. Frank, he's worth about $600 million, which is the figure that I've taken from an actual speaker, influencer known as, we'll call him Anthony Thrush. ABC Insurer is worth about $81.1 billion in the Canadian market size. Now that's all insurance. That's not just automotive, okay? But they do have a big chunk of footprint. Frank is in it for profit. So is ABC Insurer. They're in it for profit as well. And of course they are. Everyone has to profit. I want to profit. You want to profit. Well, Frank, his market base is, he's looking at the less fortunate, less educated on corporate practices, people that are looking for a better way of life. They're getting pinched, their things are tight and they're struggling and they're looking for anything to help them get through. Well, the market base for us is also the same. The insurer is looking at our shops and they're thinking, they're less fortunate shops, let's get them on board. They're less educated on corporate practices, so now the shop becomes desperate for a better way. So they get presented with these agreements and they feel that this is the best way to do it. Nobody's in this for charity. Don't kid yourself. Neither one of these situations is an organization providing charity. They're looking to profit. And so are you. So how do they do it? How do we get into this? Well, I'm going to give you an explanation here. First of all, look at your business and look at your status. Now, when I go into shops and I talk to owners, managers, technicians, painters, prep, it doesn't matter who it is. I ask, are you feeling engaged? Do you feel that there's a shared sense of activity between you and your organization? Do you feel that the group takes part with the partners that are involved? And do you feel that there's this equal sharing of investments in the business among whom your expenses and profits and losses are shared? A person who shares or is associated with another. So do you feel this relationship with your partner? Do you feel that that is how your day-to-day interactions are working? Well, unfortunately, we're just going to put this aside. A lot of the times, this is what I hear. Well, I feel like I'm coerced into something. I'm intimidated into keeping up. Sometimes I feel like people are they're kind of pushing the power that they have, or they think they have, right? This is a misuse of this perceived power, and I feel like my hands are tied. I can't stop it from happening. There's nothing I can do. It is what it is. It's the way it's always been. It's like I feel vulnerable. So a partner is the first list, and those are your textbook dictionary definitions of what a partner is. The second list that you see here is what a bully is. Now, a bully is an ongoing deliberate misuse of power in relationships through repeated verbal, physical, and social behavior that intends to cause social, psychological harm. It involves an individual or a group misusing their power or their perceived power over one or more persons who feel unable to stop it from happening. And that is textbook definition from Merriam-Webster's. So, with that in mind, this is the consensus I get when I go into shops. So this is what it's like for you on a day-to-day basis. It's going to cost you 50 cents to be my friend today, or to settle that job today. That's a pretty harsh reality. And I know that's a harsh statement, and I understand that. There's a significant difference between the two things that you just saw on that screen. Now, some of you might be sitting in here right now and you may be feeling a bit taken at the moment. Rightfully so. I can understand that. But let me explain to you how this is possible, okay? And it's not a malicious thing. It's not a thing of intent. So, here, humans are very analytical. They can be very analytical. So they use their analytical ability, unfortunately, not to analyze, but rather to rationalize. So you conform the observed facts to a preconceived bias. This is going to be good for me. They're my partner. Of course. So it's now becoming a confirmation bias. So it's basically anything you hear that confirms how you think the situation is supposed to be. So if we look at this card here, these 4 cards, if the card has a vowel on one side, then it must have an even number on the other side. All right. How am I going to test that? How am I going to figure that out? Well, if I take 2 cards and I want to turn them over to test the rule, which 2 would they be? At this point in the presentation, there was a poll question conducted amongst the people that attended. And during the poll question, there was close to 90% of people that had chosen selection A. I need to find a card with an odd number and a vowel to disprove or disconfirm the statement. So most people chose A and 4 because these are the cards capable of confirming the statement. It's telling you what you want to hear based on the descriptor. But confirming evidence doesn't prove anything. Now, the number 4 card cannot invalidate the hypothesis. But if I flip over the number 7 card, it could provide information that states otherwise. In doing this process, I'm being analytical. Being analytical is very challenging. It is not easy to do. it is far easier to rationalize something. So how does this relate to us? Well, because we're a blue-collar industry, we tend to have a lack of understanding, and we tend to get beat down by linguistics. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be offensive. This is not the intended purpose of this. The intended purpose is to get you to understand why things happen the way they do. Many of the people that are negotiating, they go through training, they go through university or colleges, they have post-secondary degrees in certain things, and they understand how to work that situation. So there was a thing called, a speaker before me had spoken about the black swan effect. So presented with an argument, you have this confirmation, presented with an agreement, you have a confirmation bias that is now put in front of you. This is a partner. I'm supposed to trust them. I benefit from them. They're a team. We're all in this together. That lovely, lovely statement. Well, here's the fact. They're not your partner. Once you clear your head of this, then you'll understand much clearer on how the process works. Tune your path to analyze. When you use the term partner, it's a form of rationalizing. And what they've done in the industry is we've managed to take the word partner, and it's just like the word love. Anybody can love anybody, and everybody's a partner. But the fact is, if you review your agreements analytically, you'll be able to find things that will help you get past this partner scenario. It'll start to level your playing field. So I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to explain how to do that. So it's all up front. I want to implement my repair plan in order to mitigate and manage my KPIs. So if I have actual factual data and I'm using that to create my KPI stats, then they should generally reflect my day-to-day business and what I'm spending my time on. So I have to account for every operation, for every line item with support. Analyze your agreements. If you analyze your agreements, you can create a repair plan using the agreement to your support. So in doing so, you have to be aware of the facts, you have to be aware of what you've signed off on, and you have to look at the other aspects that are not on there. Your KPI clock doesn't stop, man. It keeps going. It's going non-stop. So whatever has it spinning needs to be accounted for. So let's see how this works. Okay, I'm going to put this into you to help you out here. Let's take some key ideas. So disconnect the battery, initialize something, battery maintainer, hooking it up, isolating the cable ends, diagnose the scan, R&I the wheel more than once. So diagnose the scan again. Pre and post scans are useless unless you diagnose it. Welder setup, destructive testing, whether it's bronze, squeeze, rivet, aluminum, steel, doesn't matter, needs to be done. Clips, retainers, fasteners, these things are not shop supplies and materials. They are parts, and sometimes they take labor to put them in. Sealer, bonding adhesive, caulking. If it goes with the vehicle, it's a part. Setting up for appearance, masking the openings. You're probably going to mask them twice, once for paint, once for primer. Covering the car, primer and paint. Administration, total loss processes, OEM research. Corrosion protection. Bring the panel to new condition if you're using LKQ parts. Pre-washing a vehicle, detail, test drive, probably 2 techs involved. Refinish the panel backside. Measure, you should be measuring everything. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. I could go on. I could probably create 2 more lists like this. I'm just pulling stuff out on a vehicle that would be, say, a vehicle that's in having repairs done with a welded panel. So all of those items and others, they are 100% justifiable. It is part of the vehicle's repair process. It is what you're doing in that facility on a day-to-day basis. Now, you're going to hear, oh, that's included. Oh, well, they won't pay for that. We only pay to measure if it's out of spec. Okay, now, in all of my years in the industry, that has got to be one of the most asinine statements I've ever heard. We only pay to measure if it's out of spec. Really? Just think about that. Think about how that is presented. All of these items and others, again, if you're the only one asking for this, it's the cost of doing business. I've heard all of the rationalizations, or as excuses. All of the rationalizations. In production, every item, step, and process has to be accounted for. It's the only way that things are tracked genuinely 100% accurately. So let's apply it. I'm going to show you here. Think about this. Point 1 is 6 minutes. R&I a wheel, 0.3 for each time you got to do it. R&I a spare is 0.3. And that's with an empty trunk. Never mind if Edna's got a whole bunch of junk packed in there. Disconnect and reconnect the battery. Initializations of windows, steering, doors. There's a 0.7 there probably when you put them all together. Read and evaluate codes from the scans. Remember, you can pre and post scan all you want, but if you don't do anything with the content you're getting, you're wasting your time. Test drive, 2 techs. There's an hour. Interior mask, 0.3, probably twice. Once for a primer, once for paint. Cover the car for overspray, 0.2. Again, probably twice. Destructive weld tests and setup. And remember, that's an hour, but what if you're doing squeeze type and you're doing mag welding? And maybe silicon bronze. There's 3 things there. Administration, researching the OE procedures, sorting stuff for the claims, handling all of this administrative stuff. An hour to 3 hours minimum in order to do this. Pre-wash, 0.6, etc. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff, okay? Now this is, again, not a exhaustive list. There's probably a lot more. This is just an example that I'm using for a vehicle with a welded panel. Now, if you're doing it in Autotext, they would say that disconnect and reconnect the battery is an included operation, but all the initializations are not. So what you see here is 7.5 hours of generally unaccounted KPI time, or as I like to call it, a day's rental. All right. Now, here's how it applies. So some people might think, well, who cares? Whatever. It's okay. Well, this is going to work out for you in 2 ways. Number one, or not number one, sorry. Here's the scenario. Let us say we have 80 ROs a month on average, and that's including our total losses. We have about 25% with weldable repairs that are available to us, and that's probably 1/3 of the WIP with the total losses removed. Now, this is based on a poll of, it was 12 different shops that I did, so I've averaged it out. So that's about 20 a month, or 5 a week. 5 vehicles a week that could very well have welded repairs. Ergo, 5 times 7.5 is 37.5 missed hours, right? Those 37.5 missed hours of labor time, and that also equals 11.25 rental days. It's 11.25 rental days that are unaccounted for. So let's factor in the potential good time made on jobs. This shouldn't matter, but you might have technicians that come in on Saturdays, work nights, do overtime. You might have a situation where you team up on a vehicle, 2 or 3 people to get it out, okay? So let's take 30% of that, 7.5. That turns into 11.5 hours on the table. Rental formula, and you have 3.45 rental days a week that you could very well be paying for. Now, how many of you here are looking at these numbers and going, yeah, that could be right, I'm paying 3.45 rental days. Well, how come? Now, you've also got to think you're paying rental days, you're losing out on the hours, your staff and personnel are working their yin-yang off, the administrative tasks that are on top of that, that's a lot of money. Now, you could earn more gross revenue, if you account for this. And you could also save some net profit by not overbooking your WIP and paying out rentals. This is how your KPIs need to be managed. In order to make them fair and true and just KPIs, you have to account for everything. Our market's a changed place. Of course, you need to allot time to do this. You can't just willy-nilly jump in and think it's going to work in a couple of minutes, because it's not. So regardless of what the tale says, this was presented in a webinar recently, and I can't remember who it was, but this was the gist of their comment. The dynamics regarding how we fix vehicles have got to change, and absolutely, I agree 100%. The process of how vehicles move through your system will change. You have no say in the matter. You've got EVs coming, we've got more technology, we've got different substrates. It's going to change. We do not have the option of not addressing the changes in vehicle manufacturing. You can't sit there and turn a blind eye to it. It won't work. It has to be done. The processes in which we use to do this also have to change. Stop giving away the baby with the bathwater. Now, having said all this, you do have to practice what you preach. When you itemize an invoice and when you are accounting for every step of the process, you have to do it. You can't put something on there and not do it. If you put R&I a wheel, you make sure that wheel gets R&I'd. If not, it has to come off. It has to be fair. So is it that I need you or that you need me? Well, here's the misguided thought process regarding the negotiations and the content of collusion, partners, and debates, etc. So let's recap briefly what we went through. We have explained the KPI and its effects on your business. We have talked about how it has been implemented into our industry, where it comes from a manufacturing world and now it's been slid in as corporate companies want to have a little more control about where their funds are spent and how they do it. The unbalanced relationship between the data versus the application, right? If we have service versus manufacturing and processing, we've got a problem. The partner misnomer and how it has come to be. Okay, so how we have conditioned ourselves to believe everything's a partnership when it's not. So doing lines and accounting for it, factual data, and a correlation to your grand plan. In other words, you're doing everything up front. You are setting out a repair plan that reflects what you're actually doing. And in doing so, you are able to itemize and counter for your KPIs so that they're legitimate. So now here we are. We're near the end. And you're all thinking at this very moment, you are all thinking, they'll never let us do this. Well, that's a rationalization right there. I'm not even finished and you're already rationalizing things. This is, again, what I'm trying to get across to you. So let's set a few things straight. You are not obligated by law to do anything for free or substandard. And that's a fact. You're not. Now, when you apply these ideologies, it's happened in the past, and I know that you get hit with threats of collusion. Well, here's the definitions of collusion from various dictionaries. Secret agreement for illegal, deceitful purposes, illegal cooperation or conspiracy, especially in order to cheat or deceive others, a secret understanding between two or more persons to gain something illegally or defraud another. You get the gist of what I'm writing here. My guess is this is not what you're doing. You're just trying to run your business. All you want to do is run your business. And in doing so, you can charge fairly for what it is you're doing. We've discussed about being a partner and how you are not a partner with the insurers. We've already brought this up. You're associated with one another, yes. But the fact is, when you look at it, you're not partners. So here's a few more things. You're the only one asking for this. No, you're not. Others are asking for it. When they tell you that, they're just gaslighting you. They're convincing you that you're crazy, and you start questioning yourself. And then you start to rationalize. Cost of doing business, that's BS. The cost of doing business is your taxes, maintenance on the building, your lease, plowing the front parking lot, fixing the toilet. There's multiple things that are the cost of doing business. Your subscriptions to software, your Windows, your Auditext, your Mitchell, those are costs of doing business. Anything that is on that repair order that reflects the repair of that vehicle is your business. And therefore, you can charge for it. When you research OE data, this is a task. It's a procedure that is part of an operation to repair that vehicle. And in doing so, it's an administrative task that can be invoiced for. Negotiations, pretty much nothing is up for debate or negotiation. If you want to negotiate a door rate, well then have at her. But just make sure you get that door rate for everything you are doing. Your contract truly is between you and the vehicle owner. That's where your contract and your commitment lies, is with that owner of that vehicle. Loss of use, I can't understand the logic. I know that there's some crazy agreements written out there about loss of use, and how I don't understand how the loss of use has been able to determine the cycle time for a vehicle. The vehicle repair time dictates the loss of use time, not the other way around. And this I do not understand. Betterment, yes, I agree with betterment. I understand it. But I'm not a representative of the insurer. Adjusters are there for that purpose. They should be handling these types of things. Now, if I have to do this and I'm going to be doing your administrative duties, well, I'm going to invoice for it, because it takes up my time and it affects my KPIs. Not my pig, not my farm. Well, actually, that is my pig, but you know what I mean. Not my pig, not my farm. Some of these things need to change. If you're going to utilize KPIs and you're going to be held hostage by these, then you need to itemize stuff. I can't do anything for agreements and things that are in place at the time, but hopefully the next time someone negotiates something on your behalf, they do a better job of it. There's nothing written in law that states you cannot charge a fair price for services rendered. It's your business. It's what you do. And you are entitled to charge a fair price. I didn't say gouge. I didn't say anything of that nature. But, and again, it's a big but, you have to do what you say you are doing. You document it, you file it, you photo it, you have to be fair, as does the other party. So if you look at this closely, you will see technically the insurer, they need you. It's not the other way around. You've been painting a fence for 40 years or more. It's like a Tom Sawyer scenario. Never once did I say to increase your door rate or plan a coup. I'm stressing about how to get paid for what you do and how to justify it and how to balance your KPIs. They're holding you hostage and you're enslaved to this. It's time that you make some rules. Thank you for attending and thank you for listening. Please share and add any comments if you wish, and you can contact me at my website or that phone number. Have yourselves a very wicked awesome day.